Right. Okay. All right. So in 1 Corinthians 10:11, it says, "Now all these things happen unto them for examples, and they are written for our what? Admonishing." And think about what that means, because a lot of us see that word, but don't see the other words that it means behind it. So I just added those other words: for our attention, for our rebuke, and for our warning. Okay. Upon whom the end of the world are come. So what is this designed for? End of the world are come. All right. So understand there's going to be some things that you need to pay attention to. There are some things that you're going to need to be rebuked, and rebuke is good, right? And then for warnings. That's what the word is going to be there for. All right. Psalms 120 verse 18 says, "This shall be written for the generation to come, and the people which shall be created shall praise Yahuah." Okay. This shall be written for the generations future to come. Right? 22:30 says, "Seed shall serve him. It shall be told of Yahuah to the coming generations." Psalm 75, "For he established a witness or testimony in Jacob or Jacob, and appointed a law in Israel or Israel or Yisrael, which he commanded our fathers, that they should make them known to their children." So you see how this is supposed to be passed down generation to generation to generation. All right, great. Um, verse 6 says that the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who should arise and declare them to their children. 7, pay close attention, that they might set their hope in Elohim, and not forget the works of Elohim, but keep his commandments. Right? Remember, the whole duty of man is to keep his commandments. So don't let whatever is happening on the outside change you from just keeping his commandments. As long as you do this part, you're covered. If you pass away, you're covered. If you're there when he comes back, you're covered. In other words, don't why are we worried about death? And when he says death has no sting, it is no. Oh, okay, great. So everyone should be good, right? All right. So I put the focus will be on forefathers. I want us to learn from what our forefathers experienced. It is important to see how the whole book works together. So, in other words, Bereshit or Genesis and Revelations are bookends of each other, if we're able to see it. And we're going to try to do that with this extended series that we're going to be doing, just to show you that they all work together. The Brit Kadashah, commonly called the New Testament, is bear witnessing of what was said in the Tanakh. Is everyone okay with that? All right. All right, so there are 3 aeons or eons or ages, right? Eons also means life, vital force, generation, or a period of time, okay? An age. You'll always see that in scripture about an age, okay? So, I want to talk about these 3. The first one is the past, okay? There's the past. We will be going over some of this today. That's the whole point of seeing what our forefathers have done. And hopefully, we can talk about the present. We are looking within ourselves, as in the last lesson. The last lesson was pretty quiet. So I'm hoping that whatever you were quiet about, you've changed between then and now to help you with the future. Because the future, though we'll talk a little bit about it now, we're really going to talk about it in the future lessons. Okay, you're going to see coming a little bit of this towards the end of the lesson. All right, so now 2 Peter, or Kephabet 3:13 says, "Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for a new heavens, or technically renewed heavens, and a new earth wherein dwells." So there's something that's going to happen in the future where dwelleth going to be righteousness, right? All right. Revelations 21:1 says, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea." All right. So again, there's still a talk of something that's to happen or in the future, right? And the former things are going to be done away with. Is everyone with me so far? Okay. And then you read in Isaiah 66:22 says, or Yeshayahu 66:22, for as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remain before me, saith Yahuah, so shall your seed, your generations, your descendants, and your name remain. So that should tell you that Israel's not going anywhere, right? When you look at it in Revelation, you notice the 12 gates have still got Israel's name on it. Which about 144,000, you still hear Israel's name, right? So Israel's not going anywhere. The best you can do is spiritualize it. That's the best you can do to try to work around the Israel thing. Well, they're no longer. He doesn't want them no more. He now wants the church, right? Not happening. But don't get me wrong, those that are called the church, really in the Greek, ecclesia, or ecclesia, literally means someone that is called out. He's definitely looking for those that are called out. All right. All right. So everyone should be good with all of these things. They work together. Understanding the age. Okay. So the first two ages was and is subjected to sin and judgment. What are the two purifiers? So we know that the past and the present is still subject to judgment. So you remember when the books are open, if you've already passed away, that needs to be judged. If you're still remaining when that time happens, you need to be judged. So those two are going to be judges. The last one will not. But the question is, what are the two purifiers for judgment? Okay, water and fire. Everyone familiar with this, right? How many of us got in that water? Okay, so what was that for? Just you want to take a bath? Okay. All right. So let's look at some things here. All right. So water and fire, and it's really in that order. Okay. So this theme is set from the beginning to the end, as we know in Isaiah 46:10. You know the end from the beginning, right? So the beginning is going to tell us something, but the end we can understand the end from the beginning if you use Isaiah 46:10. But anyway, 2 Peter 3:5 says, "For they deliberately overlooked this fact that the heavens existed long ago, and the earth was formed out of water and through water by the word of Elohim, and that by means of these, the world that then existed was deluged or overflowed with water and perished." What time period was this? Are you familiar with the Noah? Okay, great. 7 says, "But by the same word, the heavens and the earth that now exist are stored up for," what's next? Fire. You got water, you have fire, being kept until the day of judgment and destruction of the wicked. Okay, jump down to verse 10. It says, "But the day of Yahuah will come like a thief, and then the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies will be burned up and dissolved, and the earth and the works that are done on it will be exposed." Okay. Since all these, this is verse 11 says, "Since all these things are thus to be dissolved, what sort of people ought you to be in lives of kodesh or set apartness and sadikah or righteousness, waiting for and hastening the coming of the day of Elohim, because of which the heavens will be set on fire and dissolved, and the heavenly bodies will melt as they burn." Okay, so there's water, there's fire. Okay, and I started to really go into the past, like before Adam. Was there another water thing that happened that caused some problems, and then come the what they call the gap theory, where the reason why it was in chaos and void or in this state because of what happened prior to mankind, right? And then something happens, and so now he cleanses it, and then here comes this happening again. So he says, "Okay, Noah, let me do this again." Then he says, "Okay, listen, all right, Israel, you're going to come out of Egypt, and this is a symbolic of you going getting immersed again." Notice that he says, "You know what? My last one won't be with no water; he will be with fire. Okay? So everyone's good so far. All right, awesome. All right, so the end of the age by fire. All right. So 1 Peter 3:20 says, because they formerly did not obey, when Elohim's patience waited in the day of Noah, while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is, 8 persons, were brought safely through water. Then it says what? Immersion. King James says baptism, which corresponds to this. Now, save you, now as a removal of dirt from the body, but as an appeal to Elohim for a good conscience through the resurrection of Yahushua the Mashiach. Okay, so again, there's an immersion of the earth that happened again. So immersion, or common called baptism, is not something new. It's something that's always been. Okay. So after this immersion, there was a rest. Okay. So when you look at going back to Genesis 8:20-21, it says that Noah built an altar to Yahuah and took some of every clean animal. Why didn't you use the unclean animal? Oh, okay. So he must have knew what clean animal was back then before the Mount Sinai. Okay, so another study for another time. And some of every clean bird, and offer burnt offerings on the altar. And then Yahuwah smelled simply a sweet savor. Now I put the Hebrew there for a reason. Does anyone want to take a stab at it? Et reach ha nich what? Ach. Like ruach, it's in reverse. The vowel. Someone says, how sometimes the vowel before the consonant? Great. But this is very important. So why did I highlight that part where it says sweet and it's translated as right. Why is it translated that way? Is this how you translate sweet? Okay, no worries. You know, it said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intentions of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done. So why is this word there highlighted? That word there is a root word for Noah's name, Noah, right? So, that's interesting, right? So the sacrifice became a savor of rest for Yahuwah. What does Noach mean? Rest. Okay, so this became some offering or sacrifice became a rest for Yahuwah. So we're going to see how that's the same picture of what happened with Adam. After 6 days, and he rests after all the cleansing and everything was beautiful, and then he rests, and all of a sudden he does it again during Noah's time. Okay, how are we doing so far? All right. All right. So putting some clues together. Bereshit Genesis 2:7 says, then Yahuwah Elohim formed the man of dust from the ground and breath into his nostrils, the breath of life, and the man became a living creature. All right, so when you look at this, it says the water cleansed the physical earth. Everyone remembers everything was under the water, and then what happens while it was under the water? The Ruach Merachefet, right? He hovered, or he moved, in the King James says, he moved over the waters, right? Good. So the Ruach of Elohim was put into the earthen vessel. So in other words, after everything was cleansed from the Ruach, then he brings out the earth. So now there's a separation between the earth and the water. And then man gets taken from the earth that has been cleansed. And then he breathes into this vessel, and this vessel becomes a living soul. Is everyone okay with that? All right. So now when we look at Luke 1:35, it says, and the Malach, or the messenger, commonly called the angel, answered her, said, the Kodesh Ruach, or the set apart spirit, will come upon you, and the power of Elyon, translated as the Most High, will overshadow you. Therefore, the child to be born will be called Kodesh, or set apart, the son of Elohim. Okay, so look at some of these here. He says, so the Ruach or the Spirit overshadowed or covered the womb of Miriam, right? The womb is filled with water until he was born. Why fill with water? Ladies, why do you need to have the baby with water? What does that do? Okay, it protects. Everyone agrees? Okay, there's some nourishing and everything that happens inside this water. Okay, there's a spirit that happens during this time period, right? All right, so my point is, without me really going into our part 2 of the DNA, because that would be this part would be very, very instrumental in how this works. We'll talk about that in 2021, maybe 2022. All right, let's keep going. This depends. This pandemic, you don't know where you're going to be nowadays. Okay, all right. All right. All right, so fulfill all righteousness. I don't know if he's going to make it. All right. Yahuah or Matthew 3:14 says, but Yochanan or John forbade him, saying, I have need to be immersed of you, and come you to me? And Yahushua answered, said unto him, suffer to be so now, for thus it becomes us to fulfill all righteousness. Then he suffered him. And Yahushua, when he was immersed, went up straightway out of the mayim of the water, and lo, the shamayim of the heaven were open unto him, and he saw Haruach, or the Ruach, or the Spirit of Elohim, descending like a dove and lightning upon him. Okay, now keep this in mind. Let's go back Genesis 8:8, where it says, and also he sent forth a dove. This is during the time of Noah, right? He sends a dove from him to see if waters were abated from off the face of Adama. Now remember, Adam comes from Adama. Adam is mankind, comes from Adama, the earth. All right, great. 11 says, and the dove came into him. Wait a minute, could you get something out of the dove came into him? But we'll talk about that future. It says, into him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was what? It's just something about an olive tree, olive branch. I don't know if that's another coincidence. There's a lot of coincidences, by the way. But understand that somehow when the dry land settle, all of a sudden an olive tree is brought out. And you're going to try to take a picture of what's going on here.
I'm just talking about the olive tree.
Okay. All right.
I think Israel's an olive tree.
Israel's called an olive tree. So if you start putting these little remezes, if you will, together, remez literally means something that's hinted at a different level, you can start to see that there's a pattern in Scripture that doesn't change. Okay, every time you go through the cycles, you start to see, I wonder why he used an olive tree. I wonder why he used a tree. I wonder why he used branch. I wonder why he used a vine. I wonder why he used a fruit. I wonder why he used a seed. And all of those things mean something to the Father. So everything that he does is already set up. We just got to start applying these things as we keep going. All right. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. All right. The Spirit of Yahuah. Acts 2:1 says, and when the day of Shavuot, or Shavuot, as they would use it, was, or in this is what they call Pentecost, or Feast of Weeks, says was fully come, they were all with one accord, and how? All right. Do you think this is going to happen again? All right. So if this is going to happen again, I'm not going to go over it today, but my point is, could this be the time when it's going to feel Ezekiel, when he's talking, he's going to put his spirit within you and cause you to do something? Keep my law, statutes, and Yirmiyahu it says in 31:31, and Hebrews chapter 8, verse 7. In other words, you're going to see that there's a pattern that you're going to see that's going to happen again, and we all are going to be on one accord.
One accord.
So is the feast day set up for end time prophecy? All right, great. So we'll keep going. 2 says, and suddenly there came a sound from Shamayim of heaven as it of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting. And there appeared unto them cloven tongues, like as of fire, and it sat upon each of them. So what was on them? These cloven tongues of fire, right? But then they're saying, I wonder who gave that, right? And they were all filled with the Kodesh Ruach, or the set apart spirit, and began to speak with unknown tongues. Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. Must be a translation issue. Okay. With other tongues, as the Ruach gave them utterance, right? So again, what winds up happening is the spirit, you're going to see when you get an immersion in water, there's a spirit, the Father Spirit is supposed to be there, right? All of a sudden, when you deal with fire, the Father Spirit is in that too. So this purifier went from waters and things that you see on the outside. Now you see the Spirit of Elohim through the water and through the fire. Is everyone with me so far? Okay, great. So this also was mimicked a little bit here in Numbers, or by Midbar 11, 25, 26, and says, Yahuah came down in a cloud, and behold unto him, and took the Ruach, or the Spirit that was upon him. Who's him? Moses, right? And gave it unto the 70 elders, and it came to pass that when the Ruach or Spirit rested upon them, they prophesied and did not cease. But there remained two of the men in the camp. The name of one is Aldad, and the name of the other is Medad. And the Ruach or the Spirit rested upon them, and they were of them that were written, but went not out unto the tabernacle, and they prophesied in the camp. All right. So question becomes is, here is the Spirit prophesying. What is the Spirit prophesying? He's in the camp. What is he prophesying? You understand? Because he prophesied in the camp. What's the prophecy? Does anyone remember this story?
Ken.
Okay. All right. So we'll talk about it next year. It's just questions today. But you should be thinking about the prophecy is where they're going into this promised land. So in this promised land, well, I'll be spoiled. So we'll keep going. I'm sorry. I didn't mean nothing by that. All right. Okay, the spirit of fire. Matthew 3:11 and 12 says, I indeed immerse you with water unto repentance. So the starting of this water is dealing with repentance, water, purifier, right? That's what you want first, right? You can take water. Not too many people can take fire. Okay, great. But he that comes after me is mightier than I, whose shoes I am not worthy to bear. He shall immerse you with the Kodesh Ruach, or set apart Ruach, and with fire. Okay, so it's going to be water and fire. Everyone sees it. It's water, fire. Water gives you that opportunity. Once you get immersed in the water, it gives you that opportunity to start to change your life, right? That's what you want. You want that cleansing, that purifying. But verse 12 says, whose fan is in his hand, and he will thoroughly purge his floor and gather his wheat into the grainer, but he will burn up the chaff with unquenchable fire. Okay, now, in maybe Yeshurun or Lamadyahu or Kanan's future lessons, they're going to go over possibly about, for example, this spirit and the chaff, right? There's a parallel between understanding spirit, and if the spirit's within you and fire, it won't burn you. He is a consuming fire, but it shouldn't consume you, but it will consume those that are like chaff. You see, everyone sees the picture. All right, awesome. We'll keep going. Isaiah 4, verse 3 and 4 says, and it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion, not Zion, right? Okay, Zion, and he that remains in Jerusalem shall be called Kodesh, or set apart, even everyone that is written among the living in Jerusalem or Jerusalem. This is going to be very important to know about end time here. 4 says, when Yahuah shall have washed, what is he going to do first? The filth of the daughters of Sion, okay, and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof by how? The ruach of judgment and by the ruach of, you got 2 of them, okay? Something is happening that we're going to see in the end, that this ruach is the purifier between of water and of fire. So I hope you can make it, have that the Father Spirit in you that will cause you to be spared some of this. Okay. All right. We'll keep going. So of course, Ephesians 4:30, it says, and grieve not the Kadosh Ruach, set apart spirit of Elohim, whereby you are sealed unto the day of redemption. This is why, you don't want to blaspheme the Ruach. You don't want to do a lot of things. The Father Spirit works all throughout both sides of the book, right? So for you to deny the Ruach or the Spirit, or to call it names, or to, when I say call it names, meaning in a negative way, you're going to have a problem when that day comes, because it's the very being he's using to seal you, seal me, things like that, right? Okay. Let's keep going. All right. So the information we have so far is water and fire. Water is used for 2 things, destroying and purifying. The involvement of these 2 things is the Ruach. The Ruach is right in the heart, in the middle of this. Fire is used for purging and purifying. In both cases, the Ruach or the Spirit is used. In both cases, water comes, then fire. The making of Adam, or man, and the making of Yahushua was from the Spirit, right? So we read 1 Corinthians 15:45, and so it was written, the first Adam, or man, was made a living nefesh, or soul. The last Adam was made a quickening ruach, or spirit. Okay, so the ruach, or the spirit, is pictured as a dove when the last Adam came out of the water. Same understanding as the ruach, or the spirit, that hovered over the waters in Bereshit chapter 1, verse 2. Okay, so how are we doing so far? Good? All right. So notice all these things are in layers like the tabernacle. So again, we'll talk a little bit about the tabernacle, but the way the tabernacle is set up, you're going to start seeing the garden, you're going to start seeing everything. Remember, mind you, the tabernacle was patterned remember the Father gave Moses this pattern. So and this pattern that he gave Moses is a pattern that's in Shamayim, right? So, but that would be another. We did a lesson like that back in 1999. Okay, all right. I'm just messing. All right, let's keep going. Comparing Bereshit or Genesis 8:1 with 1. So I wanted to early get with 7, where it says, and the water prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. It was covered with water. 8:1 says, and Elohim remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle that was with him in the ark, and Elohim made a wind. The Hebrew word for wind is ruach, right? He made a ruach to pass over the earth, and the waters subsided. Genesis 1:2 says, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the ruach, or the spirit of Elohim, moved upon the face of the waters. Question, what can you get out of these 2 things? We know what happened naturally or physically, but is there a spiritual or remez or something going on that you can understand dealing with yourself? I know you got that mic ready to go run. Whoever's ready for it. Okay. All right. No one? He's on his way. He is definitely on his way. Mm-hmm.
I get it out for myself is that he's constantly having this ruach constantly purifying me over and over again when I'm going to the Father. asking for the Ruach to lead and guide me as Yahusha leads and guides me.
Okay. Anyone else?
When I look at this, I think of like Yahuwah's purpose for us or for my life and how things are happening around me, but it doesn't matter because he's with me and he has that plan, and there's can be chaos and all this happening, but he's there, and I'm protected.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else?
I look at this, and regardless of what's going on around me, Yahuah is always constantly moving and changing me and strengthening me, that he's always with me regardless.
Okay. Anyone else?
When I see Genesis 1 and 2, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. But that's basically how we are.
Right.
That's how we come into this world. And then in this world, we say we're born to this sin and shaped in iniquity. But then his Ruach hovers over the face of the deep. And then, he's the one that begins to say, okay, moving things in our lives and adjusting to say, okay, let there be light, to reveal that light, the thing that comes next.
Okay.
So I can see a lot, yeah.
Okay. So what I want you to take so far, Elohim remembered Noah. I want you to think about, and Elohim remembered you all. You want him to remember you, right? I pray, right? Every living thing on the earth, cattle. Then it talks about an ark. Everyone noticed there's an ark. What's inside of an ark? Huh? What was inside? So what's inside of
the people, the cattle, the safety.
All right. So the understanding of ark. Now, if you think about it as a temple, if you're a temple, well, before I even talk about you all, what was in the ark that was in the temple?
The showbread, the rod that budded, the commandments.
The commandments. Okay. The branch of Aaron was in there, right? The commandments was in there. Manna was in there, right? And then you think about yourself. See how these levels work, right? Anyway, then we talked about how the Father's Spirit passed over the earth. Are we likened to something made from the earth?
Yeah, we are of the earth.
Okay, passed over the earth and the water subsided, right? After the immersion, if you will, here comes the earth that comes out, and we're hoping that we start to pick up this pattern. Again, we'll talk about this later on. 2, as it says, the earth was without form and void. That's you. We were chaos inside before we knew this walk. Before we doing anything, we did our own thing, or we did whatever the enemy showed us what was considered right or whatever it is. We were in darkness. Okay, we didn't have his light yet. All right, and then as it says, upon the face of the deep, what's moving over there is the Father's Spirit. It moved over the waters. So that's what I'm saying. Now all of a sudden, when we get immersed, we're asking the Father's Spirit to move in our life, so we can come out of the water now in some type of newness. Is everyone with me so far? Okay, we'll keep going. All right, so in both places, the Ruach of the Spirit moves or passed over the waters. The emergence of dry land and vegetation appears. Hence, thinking about the olive branch, and we'll talk about that in the future. Okay, keep going here. Okay, there is a connection in the rest. So Genesis 8:21, it says, Elohim smelled a sweet savor. Okay. And Yahuwah said it to his heart, I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. Okay, so and Yahuwah smelled the aroma of rest, or the savor of rest. Okay, Genesis 2:2 says, and on the 7th, and I put 6 because the older translation has 6 day, not the Masoretic text has 7th day on this. Okay, Elohim ended his work which he had made and rested. And look at the word for rest, right? What's the heart of this word? Now this is Weishbut, right? But it's the root word you see, Shabbat, right? I want you to keep this in mind. On the 7th day from all his work which he had made. Parallel that with this in Exodus 20:11 says, "For in 6 days Yahuwah made heaven and the earth and sea and all that is in them, and he what? Wayanach." See that? So one is over here is technically Shabbat. Over here is Wayanach, and why is Nach familiar? Noach. Okay, same thing. He rests seventh day, wherefore Yahuwah blessed the Shabbat day and set apart it. Okay, and so when we further get into the study of end time, we'll talk about the 7 day representation of a 7,000 year period. That will be the day of rest. Okay, so again, all of these things are just showing that as we go back over the word and we keep doing these in cycles, you start to see some patterns that doesn't change. And we're hoping, I believe the Father's hoping that with the Father's Spirit, as we begin to see this, we should start to be able to recognize his pattern. This is my Father. He does nothing new under the sun. God, I just need to grow, Father, in your word. I need to understand more and more and more. And the more I understand it, the more I can start to see more things in his word that I didn't see last year or a year before, things like that. Okay? All right. So, who all gets rest? His people, animals, the land, all are linked to the creational story. He builds the rest from Bereshit or Genesis narrative. We will see later how this works or leads to the end time. All of this there's a reason for it or purpose. All right, so more parallels in it. So, what was Noach or Noah's sin? So it sounds strange, huh?
Was it drunkenness?
Okay. Yeah, y'all believe? Is that not a sin?
Drunkenness.
Okay. So it's not that you can't drink. My man took it to the next level. Right?
To the point he passed out.
He went down to the first floor, passed out in the office down there on the first floor. Y'all remember?
With his clothes on.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
Let me
his,
drink the water.
Look. And that was like off of one cup.
his nakedness was exposed. His nakedness was exposed.
All right. So because of that, because of what he did, right, which we'll read here, it says, and Noah began to be a husband, and he planted a vineyard. Nothing wrong with him planting the vineyard, right? Some of us got some of that today. Other vineyards is at Walmart, Whole Foods. Anyway, and he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent, right? All right. So what was Adam and Hawa's sin?
Disobedience.
Okay. All right. Let's read. And when the woman saw the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her each her husband and her, and he did eat. And the eyes of them both were open, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. I said, so both ate from the fruit. Okay, both of them ate from the fruit. One was forbidden. The other was too much consumption. Remember, he got happy with it. Okay, in both cases, it caused sin and separation. Okay, is everyone with me so far? So one is something tells you, the Father tells you you can't do, and you do it anyway. You can imagine that will cause a separation, right? There are other things that he gives you, but then you abuse it. That will also cause a separation. Is everyone with me so far?
That's what Shaul said.
Okay. All right. So seeing a pattern. So Noah drank of the fruit of the vine, while Adam and Kawa ate of the fruit of the tree. Okay. While Noah's nakedness was covered by his eldest son, you can read that in Bereshit or Genesis 9:23. Adam's nakedness was covered by Elohim. Okay, and both the sin of Noach and the sin of Adam sued into a fearful curse and enduring division in their respective seeds. Both of them cause a separation, and then next you know, it was passed down. Okay, is everyone seeing the pattern? All right. In both accounts, the narrative moves from the sin of the father to resulting blessing and cursing of the seed, and finally to a genealogical development, which you read in Genesis chapter 10 and 5. All right, so the authorial intention is to relate the story of Noah's sin to Adam's fall is literally evident in the wordplay. So in this wordplay, basically, Ish, right, man, is also translated as man. We think of husband a lot, but Ish is man. And then you got Adam and Adama, right? Everyone hears the wordplay. No difference then. Noah awoke and Adam and Kawa, and their eyes were open. Everyone sees the wordplay, right? So the minute you do something wrong, something happens, right? Now, of course, we recognize what sin is and we want forgiveness. But again, I just want to see for right now certain patterns. We're going to see these patterns later on in the future as we keep going through these lessons. But right now, we're just talking because I know it's none of us in here. So that's why I said you guys can relax for right now, right? And understand that we're learning from what was written before. That's all we're doing right now. Okay. All right. So the conditions for obedience, just as in the case of Adam, Israel's obedience was within its Garden of Eden. Remember, we went over last week how the Promised Land is pictured as the Garden of Eden, if you will. The scriptures that followed that. Since the laws regulating the temple was a part of carrying out its renewed commission as a corporate Adam. Okay, so Israel's temple and land are explicitly compared to the Garden of Eden. Remember, we went over that. We're going to go over that again in the future in a minute. But also, these are places that we went over last time, so I won't rehash that part of it. It says, and are portrayed as very fruitful in order to heighten the correspondence. You see that in Ezekiel 47, 1 through 12. So I put a little picture here that we may talk about in the future. I'm not sure. It just depends on how long this series is going to be. But if you think about the tree of life, where that located, tree of knowledge of good and evil, where is that located? The garden, you see where that's located. And then how the temple was set up, north, east, south, and west, right? So again, you guys take your time if you guys want to see the picture and comparing the difference between the garden and the tabernacle. They will mirror each other really well. Okay? All right. So the promised land in his sanctuary. So the promised land itself is called Elohim's Kodesh land, Psalm 78, which we'll read these, 78, 54, and Zechariah 2:12, because it was to be a Garden of Eden on a grander scale. So remember I said last week that this Garden of Eden, since Adam was kicked out of it, then he says, okay, well, let me make a Garden of Eden outside of his Garden of Eden to see if we can maintain ourselves in that garden, right? And then what happened? He went plucking us about our forefathers out of that land, because just like it was in his garden, they could maintain in that garden, right? Everyone remembers this, right? All right. I said because of the Garden of Eden on the grander scale, the commission to have dominion, which we went over last week, Bereshit 1:26-28, first expressed through Adam's role in Eden, is now expressed to Israel, which apparently is conceived as a corporate Adam, meaning now Israel becomes the Adam, or Adam, if you will. Okay, he's taken on that commission that was given to Adam. He failed. He says, okay, now let me make a covenant with Abraham, and then ultimately with his seed. And now Israel is going to continue on what was supposed to happen in that garden. That's why you're always hearing garden outside the garden, right? Is everyone with me so far? No problems. Okay. Let's read a couple of these things. 78:5 says, and he brought them to the border of his sanctuary. Now, where is the sanctuary? Is it to the mountain which his right hand had purchased? What do you think about that? What does that mean? Think about this here. Listen. And he brought them to the border of his sanctuary. Where was his sanctuary? He's talking about Mount Sinai. Okay. So is that Mount Sinai? And he's calling Mount Sinai the sanctuary. Then he says, which his, who purchased it though? His right hand purchased that. Why is that important?
That
Anyone?
was seated at his right hand.
Because Hamashiach Yahushua sits at his right hand.
Okay. Okay. Zechariah 2:12. And Yahuah shall inherit Yehuda, his portion in the Kadosh land, or set apart land, and shall choose Jerusalem again. Why is that important? Well, he divorced Yehuda, sure. I mean, the house of Israel. But the question is, when he says, I have to choose Jerusalem again, that must mean what? Right. So everyone's thinking, hey, it's the promised land. It's the land right now. He's there. His presence is there. He has to choose it again. He has to purge it out. He has to do a lot of work in there, which everyone read about what's happening in Jerusalem. That's why my suggestion is never, if you plan on going home, don't find yourself an apartment in Jerusalem. If not, you'll have front row seat of what's about to take place. However, don't get that confused with Israel. In other words, there are places in Israel he wants his people to be, but Jerusalem, you don't read, hey, go to Jerusalem, get yourself a place to stay. I'll be there in a minute for you. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And then it says, be silent, O all flesh, before Yahuah, for he is raised up out of his Kadosh habitation. I don't care who you are, be silent, all flesh, just be quiet. A lot of us trying to figure him out. Shut your mouth. He got it. Right? So just keep that in mind, that all we are supposed to do is be obedient to his word, follow his commandments, follow whatever he told you to do. And he's going to do what he said he's going to do. His word's not going to come back to him void. So let's not try to figure him out. Right? Unless he wants you to know certain things, and he'll let you know. Okay? All right. We'll keep going. All right. So quest still remains. Anyone want to read this for me with the mic? Will I get some water? Is it okay? Okay, I'll read it after I get some water. It's your kids, Father.
I'll read it, Moreh.
Israel sinned and cast away from Elohim's presence and out of the land. At the same time, Elohim withdrew his presence from the temple. The promise of the set-apart accompaniment to enable fulfillment of the Genesis 1 mandate was not ultimately fulfilled in Elohim or any of the physical descendants, nor in Israel or the temple, but remained yet to be realized.
Okay, all right. So there are things that just hasn't happened yet. Right? They're with me so far. Now, primarily, we want to see why, right? Yeshayahu 1:15 says, and when you spread forth your hands, I will hide my eyes from you. Yea, when you make many prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood. Okay, so you got some of those. Now, we understand what was happening in their day, full of blood. The question is, how can your hands be full of blood today? Blood is on your hands. Ever heard that term, right?
Violating commandments, not telling people when they're doing wrong. Those especially of the household of faith. Letting your brother go off and sin, just with your violations of the commandments, transgression of the law. So yeah.
Okay. So remember, Wayikra Leviticus 5 talks about, if you don't tell your brother, then you bear his iniquity, right? Blood is on your hands. Okay. Isaiah 59:2 says, but your iniquities have separated between you and your Elohim, and your sins have hid his face from you, that he will not hear. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out why he's not hearing me. Sometimes he does things for me, and I know he's there, and I know he's the one that did it. How many of us know for a shadow of a doubt things that he has done for you? You can say, hey, this is definitely him. And then are there some times where you say, he's not hearing me for whatever reason? Why do you think he's not hearing you?
That's some sin of separation.
Okay, there could be sin, separation. What else?
Because what you're praying and asking for is not in his will or in his time for you.
Okay. So in other words, there are things that is exactly your sins, your iniquity has separated you. And some things that you're praying for is not for you. You can pray for all you want to. You believe it. He says, no, I don't get that to you. You may think in good intentions, but he may see that that might cause you to stumble, might cause you to fall. This might be a problem for you, or you're not ready to receive that blessing, X, Y, and Z. Is everyone with me so far? Okay. Ezekiel 39:23 says, and there, and, oh. Mhm.
See, now you open a can of worms there.
Okay, it's a can of worms.
Yeah, it's a can of worms. How does a person know what is the cause? I know sin, of course. He's blatantly done something. Of course, it's you. But how do you know it's the other that you're not ready?
Okay, so there are quite a few things. So let's just say you pray for it. I'll use maybe my own personal example. It might be easier this is one of probably many ways that everybody's been through something. I remember I prayed for something. I was like, Father, I might have to, things are getting tight, and I might have to go back into the military. I'm going to pull myself out of this retirement mode, go back in the military. And I was thinking about going warrant officer, right? And I was like, I'm going to do this. And I went back to recruiting office, and they said, hey, Sergeant, we definitely can do that. I mean, everything was great. We definitely can do that. And I said, man, that's what I'm talking about. And I'm going to be a witness in the military. And I'm going to tell everybody about this walk in the military. So, good intentions? Does everyone agree? All right. So, Sergeant said, hey, Sarge, I can get you back in there. We get the paperwork going, X, Y, and Z. I get a phone call from the recruiter. She says, something strange happened. I said, yeah, what happened? I can't find your folder. I can't find none of your information in the system. I said, well, say that one more time, because the military don't lose nothing. So I'm like, yeah? She said, yes. She said, just come on in and we'll redo your stuff. I said, oh, no, I'm good, thank you. She said, you sure? And I said, oh, I'm positive. I got it. But the reason why I'm sharing that now is to say, because if I did that, I wouldn't be here today. I'll probably be retired. But my point is, I wouldn't have done any of what I'm doing at that time. So I had great intentions, but it wasn't what he wanted from me, right? Other things could be for other people that if I just had the finances, everything will go right. But if you're not a good steward of the finances that you got now, he's like, negative. Or something that he gives you, and yourself that you still have some healing that needs to be done in you. How can he give it to you, pass that baton to you, when you go out and you yourself can go tell somebody else, but you can't eat off the same tree? You can't take the same rebuke, or you start to see that, sure, you may even know the word, but you still are in a place of need or help. That's not your time. So I'm saying there are many ways that a person can see this if they do their own soul search. And then there are some things that's delayed. Some things you think it's going to happen, Father, this year. If you do this year, it might have come to 5 years later. Whatever that time is, or whatever you've matured in that area, then it comes. So that's what I say. It's really a case by case basis. But that'll be my. I'm not gonna call it best guess, but I'm parched.
Get some water. I can get some water. So the best thing for us to pray.
Oh yes, thank you, Father.
Give us what we're ready to handle. They
don't call it smart water for nothing. No,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm saying that's the best thing to pray.
Right. For His will.
For your will to be done.
Right.
Whatever we're ready to handle. Whatever you're ready for us to go into. Us being willing, and show us where we need to mature at in order to handle whatever it is you make us ready.
Yeah, because maturing in His word, I'm just being honest with you, maturing in His word, some things, even let's say those that I've seen those that want to teach, but they're not ready to teach. So what I'm saying is there are certain things that it's just not for you, even though you have the sincere desire. Now you can be a light, that's for sure. But to take on other souls, that's a whole different story, because now you're held accountable for those souls. And then there's other things where in the book you may not want to do, you may not like. Again, whose book is it? You can't change that. You see what I mean? So when he matures you in everything and you accept everything, doesn't mean everything is for everybody, right? But when you accept it, watch what happens. Watch when the blessings start to come. Okay? All right. Ezekiel 39:23, it says, and the heathens shall know that the house of Israel went out captivity for their iniquity, because they trespassed against me. Therefore hid I my face from them and gave them into the hand of their enemies. So fell they all by the sword. Okay, so he has patience, but at some point you're gonna get him to a boiling point. He'll be sending you somewhere else that you don't want to go. Okay, but again, there's a reverse to all of this, meaning this is here. Now, mind you, this is Ezekiel 39. What happens in chapter 40, 41? Notice at some point he starts to change. Starts talking about how this third temple and how he's going to bring them back and how certain things will be reinstituted. And there's a more that comes with it. Okay, all right. So Proverbs 28:9 says, "He that turns away his ear from hearing the law, even his prayers shall be an abomination." So hiding and, the Most High hiding from your prayers, there are other reasons for that as well, right? Don't be out there sinning and then come back, "Father, you know I love you. Shabbat shalom. Father, you are awesome. I apologize," right? If you're deliberately doing something, and I want to put that with the difference between someone doing something deliberately versus someone that has an addiction. All right, someone that has an addiction, they're asking for help and they're trying to get it right. I can't put that person on the same level, if you will, as someone that has an addiction. Everyone understand what I mean when I say that? So in other words, so if someone says, for an example, I'll just use something that's simple. Let's say smoking cigarettes. You say, "Hey, defiles the temple," or no. I'll use it because some people are still working on it. Let's just say crab meat. How many people still struggling with crab meat?
Ain't nobody struggling with no crab meat.
Okay.
Come on, okay.
So I want to use crab meat.
Let's use something that's more practical.
No, that is practical.
You know what we're struggling with. We're carrying torches around here.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell you why I'm gonna use crab meat, because it won't offend nobody, but I can still get the point out. All right. Now, Franz, if you mess with that crab meat, just talk to me. All right. This is the deal. You know that if there's a person that's struggling with crab, and there's some that are not, the ones that are not, and you do it anyway, you're just being very blatant. Versus somebody else that's like, I'm moving away from that. I don't want that, and then you have a weak moment. And you go do it, and you're like, "Father, I'm sorry," and you repent of it. What's the difference between that person repenting and the other one that's really went down to Red Lobster because they had a nice little special advertisement? They just did it just for that purpose, right? They're not struggling with that. They just choose to be rebellious, right? So I'm saying there's a difference. So he's going to meet you, and of course, those that know there's a difference between few stripes and many stripes. We're not going to go into all that today, but there's still some cost to this. But my point is that those that do it willfully, what does it say? Expect judgment, right? Hebrews 10:20. Okay, great. He said, "Oh man, let me get that." I remember those days. All right. Adam's commission. Just as Adam hid from the presence of Yahuah, right? Genesis 3:8. Thus ensuing failure to accomplish his mission. Noah and Israel, as representatives of Elohim's truth to the world, likewise separated themselves from the presence and failed to carry out the commission. Same thing, Adam, Noah deal, because what Noah did, it caused a separation or division, right? Same thing Israel did. And then this says in Leviticus 26:23, it says, "And if you will not be reformed by me by these things, but will walk contrary unto me, then will I also walk contrary unto you, and will punish you yet how many?
7 times.
7 times for my
Your
sins.
sins, for
Oh,
your
for
sins.
your sins. Right? So again, there's a thing that we have to understand that we have to do. And it is a punishment for it. Okay? Thus, it is not an overstatement to say that Noah was commissioned in a new creation to be another individual Adam figure. Okay, so in other words, he told Adam, be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth. Then he tells the same thing to Noah. Everyone remembers the story. All right. And so, and the Adam figure, and Israel to be a corporate Adam. The nation's task was to do what Adam had first been commissioned to do. Anyone remember his first commission? Remember, if he's
in the garden,
right, he's going to be tilling the garden. Then there's a garden on the outside. But I want you to see is that his commission was to be fruitful and multiply. And if he's in the Father's image and likeness, which he was, that would have filled the earth. But because that didn't happen, he got kicked out the garden. Then he says, "Okay, well, Noah, you found favor. You do something." Noah said, "Okay, Father, I love you." And then after that, he made that vine, fruit of the vine. "I love you, Father." Right? He got a little drunk, and then he said, "Next thing you know, let me try Abraham. Abraham, listen." I said, "Oh, Father, yes, I'm going to do it in faith." And he left, and then it's passed down. And what happens? Israel starts acting up. Okay? So everyone's familiar with the story. It's a cycle that keeps happening, but we'll get more into it later. The nation's task was to do what Adam had first been commissioned to do. Noah and his seed and Israel and its seed failed even as had Adam or Adam. And like Adam, Noah's seed and Israel were exiled. The latter also banished from the garden land, meaning Adam was in the Garden of Eden, right? And then Israel is in a place that was called the Garden Land, right? And they were taken out. Okay, so the pattern occurs twice in Israel's history. The first commences in Mitzrayim, and the second one in Babylon. Everyone remembers what happened in the Babylonian captivity. Although a remnant of Israel returned to Babylonian exile, and failure to carry out the Adamic task continued until the beginning of the first century, technically AD or CE. All right. So again, we're going to talk about more of this in the future. All right. So a couple of things, then we'll close. So other writings that talks about understanding that the flood and things was a new creation. And the reason I just added 2 other places just to say that when Noah's time, they felt that like a new creation. When the fire comes, this last one's going to be like a new creation. Okay, it's going to be the pattern. So I'm hoping if we see this, that we can kind of see what's going to happen in the end time as well. All right, so Jubilees 5:12 says, "And he had made for all his works a new and righteous nature, so that they might not sin in all their nature forever, and so that they might all be righteous, each in his kind always. And the judgment of all of them has been ordained and written in the heavenly tablets without injustice. And if any of them transgress from their way with respect to what was ordained for them to walk in, or if they do not walk in it, the judgment forever so of nature and every kind has been written." So our lives is already kind of written, right? This is us really walking certain things out. Okay. Enoch says, 106:13 says, "Then I, Hanuk or Enoch, answered, said to him, Yahuah will surely make new things upon the earth. And I have already seen this matter in a vision and made it known to you. For in the generation of Yerad or Jared, my father, they transgress the word of Yahuah, that is the law of heaven. And behold, they commit sin and transgress the commandment. They have united themselves with woman and commit sin together with them. And they have married wives from among them and begotten children by them. There shall be a great destruction upon the earth, and there shall be a deluge and a great destruction for 1 year." Of course, they're talking about the Malachim and the flood. Okay. So there will be a final wrath in the last destruction, just as in the times of Noah. A remnant will make themselves ready. He will preserve the remnant from his wrath. Yahuwah will cause this last generation that loves him to walk in his ways. His light will shine in us and on the earth, so much so that there will be no need for a sun, moon, or stars. We'll talk more of that in the future. Okay, so there is a remnant that's going to be here. The question becomes is, how many of us want to be that remnant?
I do.
Hallelujah. How many of us is ready right now? Oh man, y'all don't have no more deodorant.
I wanna be ready.
Yeah.
I wanna
Some of them had a deodorant on. They put their hand down. You're not sure. Okay, got it. All right.
Walk in Jerusalem just like John.
So I just want us to understand that at the end of the day, that there are some things that we all are still working on. I'm not, point at each individual when you guys know yourselves, right? So if you know yourselves, just know what you have to work on, and just be mindful. You don't know when that time is. You don't even know when your time is. So why not try to get it right now while he's giving you the opportunity to do so? Okay. All right.